taking a critical look at the gaming news of the week. This is Augmented Reality, presented by the Triple S League.
Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to the Augmented Reality Podcast, your source for news, leaks, and insights about games and the gaming industry. And whoo boy, do we have, are we going to be talking about the gaming industry today. It is February 22nd, it's the Friday edition of the show. My name is Ashinity. I'm here as always with Subsidian. How you doing this morning, sir?
I'm doing good.
We're just going to call it morning now. We're just going to say good morning. It's morning somewhere.
We have some good news on top of some kind of bad news-ish stuff. It's kind of a regular old day is kind of more or less how to put it. And
you have got to mute that phone of yours.
You know, it turns on every single time. It's saying, hey, you're live, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know I'm live. And I told you not to let me know that I'm live. Crying out loud.
It's letting you know that you're live on YouTube. That's fantastic.
Muting my ringer, and this is a brand new phone. I've had this thing for like a month, and I'm still not used to this darn thing because what it does is it when I silence it, it silences the ringer, but it doesn't silence the apps. Like the app notifications, the little da-da, is different than the silencing the actual
That's garbage.
Dumb, yes, very much so. So I've got to go into like 3 different applications to silence it completely, and last week I had the same problem, and then for some reason it also like muted all my phone calls, like not the phone call, like the volume inside of the phone app was also turned off.
Oh, so when you answered a call,
so when I answered a call,
anybody.
I couldn't hear anything, and I was like, hello, and I just thought I'd press the volume up, and yeah, it was muted too. All from just quickly turning it on and trying to turn off the. So yes, technology, you have to love it. It's great, especially when it's new.
Is it a Samsung?
No, actually, it's
Minity says that's a Samsung thing.
No, well, this is an Xperia, so I think it's kind of it's in the same it's got the same OS operating system.
Right, yeah. It's an Android, obviously, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if you're listening live today, you won't need to put your phones on mute because, only you can hear them. But please say hello in the live chat. Send us your questions and comments. There's what you might be listening on your phone, just come to think of it. We will read and respond to as many of your chat comments as we can throughout the podcast. Don't forget to slam that like button. Likes it rough. And it tells us and YouTube that you appreciate this content. If you're listening after the fact on one of the audio-only platforms, we're glad you're here as well. And we appreciate your likes and follows. It does take us a day or two to get the podcast up to the audio platform. So if you want to get the latest info sooner, definitely subscribe to the Triple S League YouTube channel. You can find that link in the description below. So hello, everybody who is already active in the chat. Whisper803. Minity66 says, sup, everyone. Bluntman says hi. Scree, hey, how's it going? Overlord 580, Mr. French 86, welcome everybody, and if you're lurking in the background, we welcome you here as well. All right, so
and we're gonna need those today because it looks like there's another apocalypse brewing, and that's just gonna be so much fun.
Mm-hmm. But
I think this was kind of a big mistake. Fortnite is having some issues retaining people with the whole Apex thing. And they pulled all their ads from YouTube.
Right.
It's like
they were one of the advertisers that
all of your players watch YouTube, and you've just cut yourself off from your major source of advertisement.
It's a complex issue that's going on right now. We're not going to get into it because it's
no, we're not going to get into it, but we are we're mentioning it just generally.
It does affect gaming, and we had the Epic Games. Epic Games pulled out all their ads from YouTube for the time being. So, interesting story what's going on there. But doesn't really connect to what our main topic is today, which is the industry crisis in the video games industry. And I call it a crisis because we're seeing a lot of turmoil with a lot of gaming companies. We're seeing layoffs. We're seeing studio closures. We're seeing games canceled, games delayed. We are seeing microtransactions and monetization schemes out the wazoo. We are seeing individual games with like 5 different business models that get swapped in and out. We're seeing game developers telling us one thing, and then after all the reviews are out, they change things. It's just a mess, but we're not seeing that everywhere. We're seeing that with certain companies.
We're seeing blatant lying now too, and this whole thing with Blackout, it's
Black Ops 4, yeah. So this is kind of the main story. When I wrote in the headline there, Activision makes a liar out of its own dev. So what happened is just recently with their latest something heist update. Anyway, the latest update to Call of Duty Black Ops 4, they put
it's
in
interesting
loot
they
boxes.
call it a heist because that's what a lot of users are reporting the feeling.
Yeah,
it's like their wallets were just heisted.
Yeah, the grand heist update is what it's called.
They promised, and one of the lead devs in an interview promised that they were not going to be adding this kind of monetization to the game.
And to be fair to him, at that time, that was true. That was at least the information he had, is that they were not going to be bringing in this kind of monetization. They were not going to be bringing in loot boxes, and so he said as much. And then now, several months later, Activision swoops in and says, guess what? You're adding loot boxes to the game. Boom. Retroactively made him a liar. Did they know back then that they were actually going to be changing this down the road? Well, we don't know.
Well, now it's, you can't trust anything that EA says. And this is the other dichotomy that's been happening right now, is that the users are in this full-on dichotomy of, so you have some users who are like, no, I'm putting my foot down on this stuff. This stuff is important. And then you have some of them who are like, no, this is it. I'm putting my foot down. And as soon as they say that, they go, ooh, look, a shiny. And they run over and they're like, here's $200. And there are those of us in the line that are looking at that going, you just said not to, okay, I guess, and so that feeling too has been extremely disturbing, in that, we as a community said no, and then there's people that are just turning around and taking it like it's going out of style or something like that. It's like, good Lord, people.
Are you talking about Apex now?
No, in general. There's a lot of things going on. I mean, Apex is one of them, but it's like, that's the thing, is it's one of them. There's other stuff that's going on here that's, that's causing a lot of problems. You have you have a lot of people who are like, Anthem came out and they said, stay away from the microtransactions and stuff like this, and then boom, next day they have they've bought 2 full suits. It's like, and that they bought it, they bought shards for it because they still have the amount of so I played through the bulk of the game now, all of the missions. I've done up to basically where they're just kind of the content's petering in now, instead of going to the mission map and having 10 missions to pick from. I'm going to the map and I have 1 or 2. And there's not that many people left to talk to. There seems to be a delay of a day or so between when I could pick up and pursue additional quests and stuff like that. So I'm at that point now, and I've got almost 100,000 coins. But a lot of that stuff is one-time only coin gain. You do certain things and certain achievements, and you complete certain missions, and you get 2,000 coins and stuff. It's really generous as far as that goes. But once you kind of use up a lot of that coinage from rewards and stuff, it starts to slow down, and then your only way of getting it is through certain daily activities or weekly activities or monthly activities. So the rate at which you gain it slows down really, really fast. And I've been watching some of these people, and I can do the calculation. You get 40,000 for pre-ordering the game, and then you get about another, you get close to 100,000 through doing the bulk of the stuff in the game. And there's people that are running around with close to 120,000, so they've only spent 20, 30,000 tops, maybe 40,000 tops on stuff in the store, but then they're walking around like with 2 full suits. So they spent at least $20 on the game so far, like at the very minimum, because
on top of what they bought it for,
yeah. Oh, well, on top of what you bought it for, on top of the stupid Prime access too, which is, Bellular made a really, really good video today about how Amazon, EA Prime, or EA, their Prime subscription service is killing their fandom, and it really is, because they give you access to test these games earlier on, and those games often have the most bugs in them at those points in times, and the dogs are really, really active today. I don't know why. So yeah, it's very bizarre, and it's very weird to see that there are some people who, I don't know, they have like no gumption, I guess. It's like, which is fine, it's totally up to you. If you want to support microtransactions, support microtransactions. I support some microtransactions when I want to, or when I'm interested in the game, or when I'm whatever. But one thing that I don't support is microtransactions from EA or from Activision, because it's just enough. I've had enough of that. I've been burnt too many times by those companies. I'm not willing to put my money down for it. I support a lot of like smaller games and indie games, and there's a couple of games we've been talking about one on and off that we're going to be covering. That's definitely kind of, it fits into today's topic quite well, but we're still not going to talk about it directly yet. Where I send them a fair bit of money every month, and the primary reason for that is because they're working on a project it's really cool, and they're doing a really, really good job with it. And it's kind of revitalizing the idea and the concept of, how do you say it? They're revitalizing the notion, or they're not. I'm saying it wrong. They're by existence of what they're doing, they're putting they're dumping a bucket of water on the fire that is, games just cost too much to make these days. And that's totally not true.
No, absolutely. And we're going to be talking about this quite a bit later on, just what it costs to make games, and how really it doesn't have to cost what some of these massive AAA studios are pouring into their games. Minity has a really good question here. What would it take to fix this industry? 1 week we're complaining about loot boxes, the next we're talking about layoffs, and we are going to get to that question as well. But that's a really good question, because you're right, we don't want to just be sitting here complaining about it week after week. We should act. If we're gonna be so riled up about this stuff, we should actually be doing something. And so what do we need to do? Well, we're going to be talking about that a little bit later on, but first I want to dig more into what the actual situation is here, because there seems to be a big dichotomy in the game development industry right now. There seems to be a big split, and the middle ground is shrinking fast. It's like things are getting more and more polarized. The video game industry is split down the middle. On one side, you have companies who are loyal to their fans, and their goal seems to be make a good game and sell it. Make a product that people want to buy. You could call this sort of the classic model, because this is what game developers did, since the beginning. You make a game, you market it, you sell it. If it's good, it does well. That kind of a thing. On the other side, you have companies that only want to please their shareholders. Those are their primary focus in terms of what they're trying to accomplish with their company, is making sure their shareholders are happy, making sure those investment dollars stay in the company. And so what happens there? Well, the gamers, the fans of their products, become not the focus of their business, but a means to an end. And then when they start to have financial problems, what happens? Well, you try and squeeze as much blood out of that stone as you can and monetize your games up the wazoo, and basically just, trying to vacuum money out of your consumers for very little added value. You know, buying a how much value does it really add to spend, you know, a bunch of money for a cosmetic? You know, not that much. Like, you can play the game without it. Now, it's nothing wrong with it if people want to actually buy that, but yeah, we're going to talk about all the ridiculous number of ways that Call of Duty Black Ops 4 has been monetized. It's going to blow your mind when you list it all out. It's kind of crazy. But that's what we have, and any middle ground that once existed seems to be eroding fast. Now, businesses have to make money. Game companies have to make money. There's no question about that. If they don't make money, they don't exist, and then there's no video games.
But there's
Nobody
a difference
wants that,
between,
right?
Yeah, but there's a difference between, you know, making, you know, $1 billion and making $500 million in profit. And the differences between those two things can often be like really predatory microtransactions.
Absolutely.
And that's
but they're almost they're at a point now where they almost have to do that. You have Activision Blizzard getting on their earnings call and saying, we've had record-breaking profits this year. Let's celebrate by firing 800 employees because we didn't hit our targets. Like, I'm no expert on business, but if you're in a position where you're hitting record-breaking profits that still don't hit your goal, and if you don't hit that goal, you have to fire, what was it, 8%, 10% of the company? That doesn't seem like a well-run business to me. I don't know. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't seem like a business that is being run very well. And the consequence becomes really you're playing with people's lives. Like, okay, sometimes you got to let people go. Sometimes people have to find new jobs. It's the way the world is sometimes. It's unfortunate, but if you're running your company in such a way that the livelihood of so many people is hanging by a thread, I think that's disgusting.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not only that, but it negatively impacts morale throughout the entire company. Because again, what they did is they fired a lot of like support people and a fair amount of a fair bit of marketing people and some other positions that are not necessarily tied to game development, which is, in one hand, it's a little bit good because they had a lot of those people, and those people have been making a lot of the wrong choices, so to speak, in the company for quite a while, and they've been pushing a lot of, and marketing always does that. You know, Steve Jobs had that brilliant talk where, you know, before he passed away, where he talked about the issues with marketing. Once marketing takes over a company, the company is doomed. Because innovation is no longer the primary thing. Selling the product is the primary thing. And you can only sell the same product for so long.
Right.
Right? And especially when you're in a company that is reliant on technology, that's a bad thing. Now, for example, selling water is something that doesn't really change. People need water, period. And they need clean, you know, unpolluted water to live. And the more you have access to it, the more healthier you will be. In that sense, yeah, that's kind of a marketing thing, which has been brilliant. I don't know if you guys have seen the way that water sales through bottled water and then water services like home filtration systems and all this stuff. That stuff has gone through the roof, and none of that technology is new. That's all old technology. But this is not that field. We're in a field that relies on innovation every day. That when you are behind innovation by a few months or by, almost weeks now, you're going to get left behind and you're going to get destroyed. And not a lot of that has to do with marketing. A fair bit of it has to, about 20% of your success is tied to marketing as a whole. After your product goes live, then obviously marketing becomes more and more important. And certain marketing campaigns are brilliant, and other marketing campaigns will just sink you. And it is quite up in the air as to which will, what's best in what way and how best to define and control and to tweak it, basically. So that's more or less the various things that we've been running into as an industry, things that are causing significant problems, and how to react to that is what the industry has been struggling with recently, and that's where you get a lot of these firings. But that affects morale overall.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And coming back to this point is that yeah, you may have gotten rid of some of these jobs. I don't know if this is true or not. I saw it on a little post thing where it's like, so this couple went to work for Activision Blizzard, and one of them got laid off and one of them didn't. It's like, that person's job is probably really specified. Now they're forced to either relocate to a company to try and find 2 new jobs, or one person's going to have to find work outside of what they do, because the area whether they moved to doesn't have, it's not like they can just walk down the street and apply at some other location. And that's what a lot of the gaming industry is that yeah, for the most part, and this is the positive side of things, there's a lot of growth going on. Like right now, Obsidian is hiring like crazy because they know they have a hit on their hands. They have a huge studio. They have Microsoft funding them, giving them basically a blank check saying, build it right, do whatever you need to do to build it right. And so they are hiring like crazy right now. There's a whole bunch of other companies. When the whole thing went, kind of hit the fan last week, there were tons of big companies saying, hey, here's our list of what we're currently hiring for. Maybe you can fit in with one of these things. And there was a lot of that going on. There was a lot of people posting their job boards. CDPR has been hiring like crazy for 3 years now straight. They've been hiring nonstop, almost nonstop. They're up to well over 430 to 450 people working on just Cyberpunk, and then there's about 120 devs that are not working on Cyberpunk that are working on something else, or multiple something else's. Mad Queen and I were talking about this earlier this week, doing the numbers and trying to figure out exactly what devs are working where. And we know that at CDPR, there's about 450-ish that are working on CP for sure. And then we have about another 120. We know where about 80 of those are on projects that we're not mentioning. But then that still leaves us a chunk of devs that are working on something, but we don't know what it is. And we're trying to place that and trying to like line it up with other projects and stuff like this. So there's a lot of hiring going on in the industry as a whole. And as I mentioned before, with this indie game that we're getting closer and closer with, this studio themselves, they went from 3 guys in a garage, basically, to now they're starting to plan out, if their funding continues to roll in the way it has been, they're looking at bringing in another 3 to 4 people at the very least.
Right.
And this is a company, this is a game, which again, we haven't mentioned this one yet, but it's one of these things where it's like, I feel that if they could pull this off right, that this will kind of be like a new Minecraft. I don't mean Minecraft is in the gameplay, I mean Minecraft in the way that, this little indie game started up and it started to pull in a lot of attention, and then it went from there to like, to superstardom in less than a year. And I think this has the possibility for that. It doesn't have as high of a ceiling as Minecraft had, but it's certainly one of those things that could be everywhere very quickly. Mm-hmm. Or it could be, well, any game has the ability, any product has the ability to fail as well. So we're keeping our eye on that. And as a whole, you're seeing this in the industry more and more and more. And, and it's a very rocky time, but the only people that seem to be really suffering quite badly are the big mega companies. The mega corporations are the ones that are having issues.
And part of that problem, as we might as well segue to this topic here, part of that problem is the bloat of these companies. And it got to the point where I was wondering for a while, are games just becoming too expensive to develop at this scale, to the point where, Activision pulls in record profits and then has to lay off a whole ton of employees. But are games just like a game like Anthem, like such a massive budget, such a massive time investment?
5 years in development.
5 years in development.
And what they gave us was...
It's okay. I would say at best you could call it okay. It's
no, at best what this is, the only thing that's different between this game now and basically what they could have taken from Mass Effect 3's multiplayer and improved on that. Basically what this revolves around is you've added flight and a big open world.
Right.
That's it. That's legitimately that's the only difference. They had so many classes in the original that the classes in Mass Effect 3 outrank what you have in Anthem by a massive amount. The weapons there were so many weapons in Mass Effect 3 as well that you don't have in you've got kind of close to the same number-ish if you count in all the masterworks and legendaries and that. But a lot of them are just like subtle changes on themselves and whatnot. So and you can't mod them in the ways that you could mod them in Mass Effect 3. I like Mass Effect 3 in the way that I could mod and tweak things and add customize the weapon to make it do what I wanted it to do.
Right.
I loved shooting through like 3 feet of wall and taking out somebody. There was a couple of sniper builds that were really fun for that. Like good lord, I love those things. But overall, it's the same thing, just with flight. And a new graphical engine that yes, it's an improvement from Mass Effect 3 in certain places, but I mean, I walk around the fort in Anthem, and if you go around a corner too fast, which is why they didn't add running in the fort to begin with, if you go through a door too quickly and turn around, you turn around to a corner and the entire area is not loaded. Like, the entire area is not loaded at all. And I have to wait about 10 seconds for the whole area to load, which is the amount of time I saved by sprinting. So there's the problem, and why they didn't add sprinting originally, is because the engine can't handle it, which is disgusting because the fort is ridiculously small and has no foot traffic. It doesn't have no foot traffic. It has very minimal foot traffic. There's one or two things that, there's NPCs walking, and you'll come around the one corner. It's usually when you're headed to the forge in the launch bay, where there's like, oh, look at all those people walking. Except those people they walk that way, and then that's it. So it's kind of fake. If you walk around that corner and you look at them, and they start walking forward, they go to wherever their path was set to, and then they stop walking, and then that's it. There's no NPCs walking back and forth. There's no NPCs leaving their stalls, going up, grabbing something, coming back. That it's a fake. It's incredibly fake and fraudulent in the way that they portray people and crowds in that game. It's not an open world game. It's not, which is such a step back, because Mass Effect had way better crowd systems than that. You had way better interactions between people. When you were in the Citadel, or when you were in Omega, it looked like those places were busy. And you look at Anthem in the way that it's sitting at right now, and it's just not there.
Yeah.
And this boils down to bloat, and the bloat of it is right now, the bloat in EA is their engine. Frostbite is just not a good engine. It just is not. It's good for shooters, and that's it. It has no ability to properly make a good RPG. It's constantly... It takes them several years to create a large area and then to populate it with NPCs and to have those NPCs do things and not constantly crash or die. And this is the disgusting state of EA.
Well, so this is the engine that EA has made standard across all of its development studios.
Yeah.
And so a game like Anthem, there's a lot of extra work that went into Anthem that wouldn't have necessarily had to be there. They wouldn't have had to put that much in if it had been a different engine that was more suited for the type of game Anthem is. So there's a whole ton of work hours and a whole ton of money being poured into game development that...
Now here's the disgusting thing. Here's the disgusting thing. Out of all of the games that EA has launched recently, the only one that's doing good at all is Apex Legends. And guess which of all of their recent releases is the only game that doesn't utilize the Frostbite engine? It's Apex Legends. Holy crap. And here's the more disgusting part, because this is even more disgusting than all of the stuff put together, is that Apex Legends is a shooter. Is a first-person shooter, which is what the
Frostbite engine was
Frostbite was designed to do from the ground up to begin with.
Oh boy.
How crap is this studio? Is this publisher, EA, that they create and force down the throats of their developers an engine that is riddled with bugs, riddled with instability, subject to massive problems when you're making third person or any game that's not a FPS, that has really big issues with animating and dealing with assets in a generalized appropriate way. And that's not used by pretty much anybody else other than just their own studios. Which means that you don't have intelligent creative fixes being made by other people. Right now, one of the best engines out there to make a game on right now by developers, they're saying, is the Unity engine. Because the Unity engine can do almost anything. And why? Is because it wasn't that great, 5 years ago. But because it's being used by literally millions of people every day on everything from small indie projects to massive big blockbusters, there are things that are being created and being designed for that system from the ground up to utilize and create and to establish better and better systems to handle all of those things.
Yeah, people build their own tools.
You have millions of people.
Yeah, you can go online and download tools for Unity that someone else has built and put out there, and maybe other people have improved, and that you plug into the program and it does exactly what you need it to do. You don't have to spend hundreds of hours developing it yourself.
Yes, and you do not have this with Frostbite. Frostbite, you have, highly paid devs who are working on it, and the numbers that I've been getting from some inside sources, and oh my goodness, these dogs! Hold on.
All right, yeah. So like Cy was saying there, it's just insane. It's insane in that. So I've got a couple sources that said that in order to create an hour of content, it takes a large team of over a dozen developers almost a week to make that content. Because it's the engine is so bloated, not in bloated as in you can call the Bethesda engine bloated because it's been utilized for so long and it's got a bunch of ancient code and stuff like that in it, and it's not it doesn't
It's not as smooth as it could be. That's the big complaint about that engine. It's bloated with time. The Frostbite engine is bloated with problems and incompatibilities and things that you have to go back and you have to tell the engine to do the same thing every single time. You can't just, create a scenario, create a thing, get it to work through it, get the engine to understand what you want it to do, and then replicate that. You have to build it from scratch every single time. It's like you have a
it's like you could write a novel in MS Paint if you want.
Yeah,
but you're gonna have problems. Yeah,
you could.
That's not.
This is a great example. Yeah, you can write a novel in MS Paint if you want, or you could just use a Word.
Use Word.
Microsoft Word.
Yeah, or any of the free alternatives to Microsoft Office that work really well.
Yeah, and this is what EA has done, is they've saddled all of their studios with this bloated, archaic piece of garbage, and do not believe anybody. There's a lot of lying that happens in the industry, a lot of bold-faced, front-up, complete lies that should be, especially the game journalists, they really should be hammering back on these people for this stuff. We understand that certain developers have to say, oh no, we weren't forced to use the Frostbite engine here. Yes, you were. And you were told that if you did come out and blame Frostbite, that you would not have a job the next day. And if you got laid off, you wouldn't have the golden parachute that some of these people have had. Point in case the Montreal studio. Because they kept their mouth shut, they got certain bonuses when they left, when they got laid off. And it was made extremely clear that if they opened their mouth and started talking, that all of them wouldn't get that money.
Wow.
That all of them wouldn't get those benefits. And that they had to keep their mouth shut because that's just the way things are. And that is the way that, if you think that's conspiratorial, I'm sorry, but that's the way that the industry is. It's just like the conspiracy, quote unquote, the idea, and I shouldn't be saying that word because YouTube hates that word. But it's the idea that that they say, oh look, these skins are worth $20. Originally they're worth $20. Like, we put in a lot of work, we have to sell these things for $20. And then when the actual numbers come out, we go, oh no, it's not $20, it's $8.50. Haha, see, it's great. But I had to pay for the game, to get into it before I could buy these things. In reality, these things cost you you could sell them for 50 cents each and you'd be making a big profit. You're only bumping it up to $8.50 because originally you said it was worth $20. And again, this is not a new tactic. There's lots of people who are like, that's conspiracies, that's garbage. That's normal marketing. That's the way that marketing for pretty much everything has been for the last almost 100 years in general North American European culture.
Absolutely, and so I guess it shouldn't surprise us a ton that it's happening in the gaming industry too. But when we get it's getting to the point of being ridiculous, and we're going to get into that in just a sec. Plus, we're going to address the question of what do we do about it, or what does the future look like, and a couple other news topics that relate to all this. So definitely stick around for all that. You're listening to the Augmented Reality Podcast. And we love seeing the discussion in the live chat. If you want to keep the conversation going after the live broadcast, we welcome you to join our Discord community. You can find the link in the description below. It's a place where you can chat with us and other Triple S fans about all the things we love to talk about and stay up to date about everything we're doing here at the Triple S League. Click the link below to join. Be sure to say hi to us in the welcome channel. If you're just joining us, if you got here a little late, we are discussing the crisis in the gaming industry, the dichotomy between companies focusing exclusively on pleasing their stockholders versus companies that care about the people who give them money, which is their fans, and also the dichotomy between just really bloated, bogged down, wasteful development practices compared to some of the streamlined and more innovative development practices that we see some other companies engaging in. For example, The Outer Worlds from Obsidian. They developed that game on a shoestring budget. They developed that game because they had to, and so it's not going to contain all the features that we're necessarily used to in large AAA games, but it is being built on a classic model. And they said, when asked about microtransactions, they said, hell no, we're not putting microtransactions in our game. But the point there being that they developed that game without the infusion of money they got from the studio getting bought by Microsoft. We also have CD Projekt Red saying, no, we are not going to put microtransactions in Cyberpunk 2077, nor is there going to be a Battle Royale mode. So Droblet in the chat asked, what do MTX and BR stand for? That's right, microtransactions and Battle Royale. Darkus asks, isn't that old news? And yes, it kind of is, but there are...
Not the Battle Royale thing. That's
right, that was never specifically addressed before, but the microtransactions
that was
bit...
hinted at. So they had, back in the day, they had, in the last major financial meeting, that was one of the key questions was, are you guys adding a Battle Royale thing? Because the stock investors are really interested in this. Why? Because they look at what, Fortnite has done, and they look at all these other companies, and they go, all these stockholders that don't really know very much about the gaming world say, hey, they're doing it, why can't we? And this is what you get. This is what happened in the past that gave you all of the spikes of stupidity. WoW came out, and every company rushed to make an MMO. And basically none of those MMOs were any good.
Well, by the time the game comes out and you're rushing to make a copy of it, you're already several years behind the trend.
Yes. And you've shot yourself in the foot because you're trying to copy, but you're trying to be slightly different. You're not taking the time to really create, the core thing. And what you end up getting on the outset, on the other, coming out of that, is you get something that nobody's interested in playing. Because you didn't capture the finite details that make the thing what it is. We've discussed this before. There were MMOs that cut out jumping because jumping was a difficult thing to add into a game, and if you didn't need to add it, then you didn't need to add it. Except that's a key thing that players do when they're in an MMO. Every time they get a little bit bored, they sit there and jump, and that jumping is entertaining to them if the jumping looks cool and functions correctly. And a lot of games, they didn't put the time and effort into it that WoW did, so therefore that feature didn't go over very well. Some of the chat systems were atrocious. Some of the guild systems were impossible to navigate. And these are all little things that impacted the community. It's one thing after another. It's a domino effect. And every time you remove or misplace a domino, whenever you try to go for the effect, you're getting a lot of misses, and then you have to try and restart and all this kind of stuff. So this is really basic stuff, except this is what happens when you let stockholders make these decisions. And CDPR was asked, hey, this whole Battle Royale thing is going really good. You guys should add it to the thing. Are you going to add it to the thing? Are you going to add it to the thing? Are you going to add it to the thing? Like a broken record. And so they said, oh, maybe we're thinking about it. But now they just recently came out and said, no, we've messed around with that, and that's not what we're doing for this game. This game is not going to feature that in this particular way, shape, or form. And so that's the new news in regards to that, as well as, again, they're confirming, no, they're not putting out, microtransactions into the game. Now, they do have stockholders, but they're their own publishers. The biggest problem seems to be when you have publishers who are mostly interested in making their stockholders happy, that then turn around to the developers and demand that the developers do something that they think will be good for their bottom line, but is not actually good for the game in general. And that's what you have in Activision.
Right. That is another big dichotomy in the gaming industry right now, is the one between the publishers and the developers. The people who are actually making the game versus the people who are marketing and selling the game. And really, it seems like the publishers hold all the cards in a lot of cases. you have EA, of course, owning a whole bunch of development studios. And then we're constantly seeing them closing, and we're seeing more layoffs. It was just announced today or yesterday that there's expected to be massive layoffs at one of EA's studios in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all coming sort of on the heels of, Activision just laying off a ton of employees. So on the one hand, we have Obsidian, we have CDPR, studios that are hiring, studios that are committed to this model, this classic model. Make a good game, sell the game, make our fans happy, and then as a result of that, our stockholders will be happy if our company has stockholders.
Mm-hmm.
Or, if it doesn't, then we'll be happy as the owners of the company, whatever. On the other hand, you have companies that seem to have extreme bloat and they're desperate to make up for this by adding revenue so they can keep operating. And when they don't hit their revenue targets, they start to axe the people.
Yeah, and that's what you have. That's what's
this
happening
seems,
in Activision right now, and
yeah,
it's getting worse and worse and worse.
It seems
because,
incredibly self-destructive. Like this can't.
Well, yeah,
and this kind
but
of. I want to.
We'll see where this dichotomy goes, because, like I said earlier, is that some of these players have had enough, and they're going to walk away. And if that's 5 or 10%, that's ultimately going to affect more people. Like if you have a big portion of your population leave any service, any concept, any stuff in general, then those people are part of it. It reduces the crowd or mob mentality. Mob mentality is kind of used to describe how mobs work, but it's also very apt when talking about products and selling people certain things. If you have 100 people in a line to get a pair of shoes or a jacket or a shirt or something like that, and you're seeing these people wear this product nonstop, the product becomes more and more popular, more and more mainstream. And the less you have somebody walking around with something that you're trying to mass market to a mass market crowd, the less you have people starting to wear that, then the less people in general as a whole start to wear those things.
Right.
And that's what we have here is that, yeah, you might lose, 20 or 30% of your population, but you might get a temporary increase of 30 or 40% of your income. But that's going to only last so long. And that 30 or, that 20% of players that left your service because you did this move, ultimately those 20% are going to impact, an existing 10% or 20%. Because in WoW, you have this happen. Every time WoW kind of falls apart, it's the same thing. It's like, key members of the guild left. Key members of the guild are not playing anymore. I thought about this the other night. I was thinking about this. Where you had, when guilds fall apart, typically it can be all traced back to 1 or 2 people leaving the guild. You have 1 or 2 people who walk out, and they were the glue holding 2 or 3 other people in at that time. And when they walked out, they were the glue that was holding, 5 or 6 other people. And when those 5 or 6 other people left, they were the glue that were holding, 20 or 30 of the people there. And that's what you have happen. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen the same song and dance fall, and this is something that you can find just by researching and talking to people about why they left their, why'd you leave your clan? Why'd you leave your guild? And this is really common. Why'd you stop playing League of Legends? Well, I stopped playing League of Legends because 4 of my friends stopped playing League of Legends. It's like, oh, do you like League of Legends? Yeah, I still like League of Legends, but I don't have anybody to play with. And it's not fun to play by yourself. That's a very, very common topic. So it's the whole thing about trying not to lose the initial 10% or the initial 5% and the initial 20%, because the more you lose that and the more common that happens, the more that's going to snowball into every other aspect of it. And Activision is walking right into this with this insane decision to just bleed everybody who's playing this game and to turn the developers into liars and to walk away from this and go, yeah, it's fine. We gotta increase our income. And what they're hoping for is that'll be enough to hold their stock up, because again, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, Activision is the company is run by morons. They do not bank most of their profits. They spend most of their profits. They put most of their profits into the hands of their lead people within the company. They give out massive, insanely massive bonuses to their big core staff, because those were the original employees that decided that was how they were going to do things. And yeah, it made them wealthy, and a lot of them have retired with more money than they know how to spend. But at the same time, you've set up your game to fail, because that if you're working under that process, under that mindset, then when a rainy day comes for your company as a whole, you don't have anything in the bank to fall back on. And that's what a lot of these companies have done. CDPR has a war chest of, I think it's like $200 million. Give or take quite a bit, because I'm not privy to their financial records. But that's money they're sitting on that's invested in really safe investments that earns, anywhere between 3 and 5% interest. It's in a safe place, so that if tomorrow, if they have a massive problem hit, they can carry themselves through it. EA and Activision don't do this. They're really dumb in the way that they money in, money out, money in, money out, money in, money out. As soon as money stops coming in, that money still needs to be going out, because they're used to that process.
Right.
And they'll end up hitting a wall so hard, so fast. This is how you lose. This is how multi-billion-dollar companies go bankrupt. And for a lot of them, if they don't have assets, if they don't have bankroll, if they don't have a rainy day fund, and they hit one financial month of difficulty, they're gone. Like, they crash and burn so fast that it's amazing. One day you're walking in as one of these higher positions, you're making $2.5 million a year, and you walk into your office one day, and the next day you walk in and it's gone. It's like, that stuff happens, and it happens fast. And the studios don't understand what they're doing, how they're setting themselves up for this failure, because A, they're really bad with their money, and B, they're starting this whole snowball effect of they lay off people. That increases the stress on other people within the company. That stress then translates to their user base. Those users then start to leave. Then it starts to snowball from there. And what Activision is hoping for is they're hoping that they'll create the next Apex or the next Fortnite.
That's
because
a lot
Apex
to bank on.
Apex saved EA's ass. It really did. EA was going down, and going down hard. They were you count Apex out completely, and that company is reporting one of the worst financial quarters that it's ever reported. Their stock continues to nosedive. They lose another 40-50% of their stock worth. They're down to less than a quarter of what they were worth a year ago, and they're down to and it just starts to snowball from there. Apex saved their butts. They 100% saved their butts. Good game or not.
I'd like to interject here with something positive. So, we're going back a few years here, but in 2013, 2014, Nintendo was having some financial trouble. And, sales of the Wii U were not great. Their stock was down. The CEO of the company, Satoru Iwata, took a 50% pay cut. And the rest of the board of the company took something like a 20% pay cut. And they did this so that they wouldn't have to lay off employees. And one of the explanations he gave is, if we reduce the number of employees for better short-term financial results, employee morale will decrease. And how are people supposed to make good games if they're worried about being laid off? If they're worried about them having a job the next day. Oh, have they ever?
They have recovered. Yeah. That was the best, smartest, most important move that they've ever made at that company, was to do that was to get back, because then they've created the Switch, and the Switch has been an amazing, experience for everybody. It's just been through the roof. And you have this same thing that's been going on here with these other companies, except, again, they didn't prepare for this. They didn't get ready to take this hit. They're going from hit to hit to hit. It's like living paycheck to paycheck. All it takes is
seeing them do the opposite.
One paycheck for you to get into big trouble.
No, absolutely, but they're doing the opposite. The what are they called? The executives at the top are continuing to sit on their big fat salaries, and
some of them have been getting raises,
and they're axing raises. Yeah, but then they're axing people, closing studios, doing all this. So let's talk about the future now. Let's talk about solutions. Let's talk about the future, going back to Minity's questions earlier, and what a lot of people are wondering, I'm sure, and I'm wondering myself, because we don't want to just sit around and complain about problems. We want to talk about what are we going to do going forward? How can we fix this? Or is it going to fix itself? Is this eventually going to, are the companies that are engaged in these practices going to eventually eat themselves and fall apart because it's not sustainable? The big
ones will, because that's just, that's kind of a natural progression of industries.
Yeah.
And you have this in pretty much every major industry in the last 100 years. With the exceptions of ones that create total monopolies. If you allow a company to create a total monopoly, then it's really hard to pry that company out, because its bloat has to outlast the sustaining effect of the entire population, which is not easy to do. In a lot of scenarios, it's really hard to do, and depending on how strong and how controlling and how connected a monopoly has, sometimes they only fall when the government falls as well, and that's when you have total anarchy. The USSR is a great example of this. There were a lot of companies that were heavily tied to government agencies during that time period, and when they fell, it all fell at once. It wasn't just a fall in the government and then some of the companies were around to keep things going. No, everything fell at once, and everything crashed and burned at the same time. And so that's what we'll see from some of these companies is it's going to take a massive industry-wide shortfall to really stop them from going forward. Because again, it's like all of the bad decisions that EA has made, all of the negative stuff that they've been working on, all of the problems with that company have all been temporarily remedied by a single game, by a single release. They have managed to save their collective butts, and that one game is sustaining pretty much everything else right now, concurrently. And so overall, it's we're headed in that general direction, and it's going to be kind of crazy going forward, which really sucks.
How long is this going to take? Because obviously, these tactics are being used because they're somewhat successful. There are people who are willing to engage in, fans of Black Ops 4. I went through it and I counted 7 streams of monetization on Black Ops 4. You've got the base game price. You've got the season pass price. You've got direct buy cosmetics. The zombie mode has some sort of resource monetization. You have the paid for contracts. I don't know exactly what that is, but that's one thing that I found when I was researching this. You've got something like a battle pass, and now the most recent one that they've added in their last update, as we mentioned at the top of the podcast today, they've added loot boxes. So that's 7 streams of monetization in a single game. I don't even know if I got them all.
Yeah. No, it's...
But obviously somebody is buying this stuff, and there are... the game obviously has a big fan base, and I don't begrudge people for being fans of whatever they're fans of. It just seems like the company is really taking advantage of their most loyal fans, which seems to be a trend. We just had Bethesda banning their most loyal player. That's a story we don't have time to get into today, but that was a rather interesting. The most active and loyal player who has accrued the most hours in Fallout 76 got banned this week. Over
over having too much ammunition,
allegations
which is not in the agreement that when you log into the game. Nowhere does it say, hey, you can't hold on to 50,000 rounds of ammo. Nowhere does it say that. And that whole thing is just a big mess. They just made a big announcement. We'll cover this probably on Tuesday with the whole 76 and where it's headed, what's going on. I still hold on to, and I still stand by the comment that I made originally, is that when private servers come out for this game, things will get a lot better. And it might be worth playing once private servers came out, because private servers really help. I mean, any game that kind of follows the survival thing, private servers are are a big deal when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Right.
So no, to answer the question as far as the positivity goes, there's a lot of positive effects that we're seeing from this as a whole, because you have more and more of these studios that are making these stances, that are coming out saying, you've got the CDPRs, which is they're self-publishing, and then you have the Obsidians, who are under they're under Microsoft, but Microsoft has turned over a new leaf and said, look, we just want to make good products. And then you have you even have Bethesda, which a lot of people are going to be annoyed with me saying this, but you haven't seen their next game. You haven't seen their next project. The next project is not a microtransaction ladled live service. It's a traditional Bethesda Studios game. And when this stuff comes out and they get reassured that this is what the market really wants from them, and that they have a fan base that will support them when they make this content and put this content out there, then you will see generally this move to gaining goodwill again from their users. So it's there. The silver lining is definitely there. It's definitely coming. It's definitely in the process of being created. Not to mention all the indie studios that once again, there's a lot of indie studios that are working on really, really good games. And, as much problems as the game industry has been having, and other things like Patreon has been having, the one thing that continues to grow is indie games and support for indie games on a variety of platforms. Whether that's PayPal, or whether that's through Patreon, or whether that's through a bunch of other things. It's the content and the support behind these companies. And we talked about it a little while ago, but why it's better versus like a Kickstarter. Kickstarters are terrible because you're giving them an upfront amount of money and saying, here, make the game. And what happens to the vast majority of them? Most of them undercut or overspend. Not undercut. They under assume what they need to make the game. So they think that $1 million will make the game, and then they'll burn through $1.5 million, and then they go bankrupt. It's like, wow, how could that happen? Whereas with the current system that seems to be taking over, it's the I'll show you the progress for the month, or for the year, or for the half a year, or whatever, and then you guys decide whether or not it's worth supporting for the next step. And you keep making these steps. You keep stepping forward. You keep putting out the content, and as long as the population is still behind you, you're gonna keep getting that money. And that seems to be where a lot of innovation is starting at. That seems to be where a return to. I had a great conversation with a dev this week, small indie dev. Spoke with a new dev from another bigger company that's really exciting too. But I spoke with this small indie dev and he has amazing story content in his games. And he's been working on this thing for a really long time, and it's starting to get to the point where he's going to be able to release it in a couple of months, as a nearly finished product. And his story writing is really good, and the content that he's creating is solid. And we went through point by point and did my analytics stuff, and he was really happy because he wasn't certain whether or not he was on the right road, and I kind of reassured him by looking at the numbers, and the numbers show, you know, this gradual growth, and it's starting to look better and better and better for him. So this is stuff that's been boiling for a long time now. It's been simmering, and it's starting to hit this boil, and what we're going to see from this going forward is we're going to see more and more of this good stuff. And I mean, and just wait until some of these bigger projects get out this year. We've got, we got CDPR, most likely, not guaranteed, but most likely putting out Cyberpunk this year. Very strong possibility for that. We're going to see something huge at the E3 show this year on Sunday, which is when Microsoft's their big event is on the Sunday, which happens to be 6/9, by the way. And that's probably going to be them showcasing the game on a massive scale, and then the chances of us getting it in the fall is quite high, but not guaranteed. That's still a preferred date, and we covered that in a recent video on their whole Valentine's Day leak. They kind of more or less, they said it with really, really, I know some people are like, you're kind of reading into that, but trust me, I know the company really well. We know well over 40 people that work at that studio. We've communicated with well over 40 people. Not that those people have been giving us inside information nonstop, but we know them and we know where they stand. We know we have a pretty good indicator as to their work ethic. And between that and leaks and inside information from other sources, it's pretty clear that this is their target date, and this is what they're going for. So this year, potentially very strong chance that we're going to get this thing, because one of the things that we're most likely also going to get this year is we're going to get the first teases. Not the first teases, because they've already teased the next consoles. We're going to get a sneak peek at the next consoles, which means that the consoles are going to be about a year away. So anybody who wants to put out a game on the current consoles has probably have less than 18 months to do so at this point. We're probably looking at about 18, anywhere between 20 and 16 months for the next console generation to hit us. It's getting really close. It's well over a year, but it's not more than 2. I really, really doubt it. Could be, but at this moment I really doubt it. I'm not laying down my money yet on it, but it's looking like we're gonna get a because we got the tease last year that, hey, we are working on the new consoles. They are a thing that we are working on. They are pushing technology. We're gonna have, and we're gonna have all this like ray tracing and all this other cool stuff start to hit this next console generation, and it's gonna be great. And it's definitely being worked on. So yeah.
All right, just getting back to
a quick question from Bluntman. Wants to know whether or not we have any information on the Cyberpunk app. Yes.
Cyber is deciding what he can and can't say.
Yes. And yes. There is more than... Let's just put it... So, I'm going to give you guys some information right now. That's very interesting about this whole Cyberpunk thing. And I don't know, maybe we'll clip this out for an individual thing. As far as the Cyberpunk, as in Cyberpunk created by Mike Pondsmith, we have basic confirmation on 3 titles at the moment, and maybe more. So now when I say titles, please don't confuse this. This is products. Products is a better way of putting this. We have 3 confirmed products for the Cyberpunk universe. being worked on. Two of these are obviously not a big secret, although one of them you might not have really known about until now. But one of them, of course, is Cyberpunk 2077. The other one is the Telsorian Games studio is working on a new tabletop, and there may be some tech stuff that goes in with that. We'll leave that as it is. They have been doing a great job at teasing the content constantly, putting it out there pretty much constantly. So yeah, it's working quite well, and generally it's something that we're looking forward to. So this is, for the most part, what we're kind of sitting at, looking at, is we're looking at we've got CP77, and then we also have, this Telsorian Games thing, and we also have another project that we're getting information on, but we can't quite share it yet. But there is another thing that's being worked on by another thing. And then, of course, we have the possibility of seeing one or two other things within the next 4 years, put it that way. So this is going to be big. This is going to be huge. The general success with the Battle Angel, is it Battle Angel? It's Battle Alita. That movie that's out right now. That's been helping the whole cyberpunk genre thing as well. And so we're going to be seeing this, we're going to be seeing this more and more. This seems to be something that's sticking around. I have yet to see that movie. I'm going to go see it sometime, maybe today or tomorrow.
Cyberpunk as a genre seems to be on the rise.
Yeah, it seems. There's tons of, and that's my point. Is it's really taking off, and what we're going to be seeing over the next few years is a lot of content and programs. So there's definitely an app that has been that has seen some work. We haven't been able to really confirm very much on that regard, other than the fact that they bought out a studio that didn't buy out. They've been hiring a lot of people for that are familiar with the technology that revolves around apps and stuff like that. There's obviously a reason for that, and they have been doing that for well over 2 years now. So and not just them, also Telsorian Games. So yeah, there's definitely some movement going on there. I don't want to step on toes is the only thing here. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we should circle back to our main topic here anyway. Just to round out the discussion here about how things are going to work going forward. So we have these companies again, like we've been talking about all day today. We have these companies that are incredibly bloated, that are more concerned with pleasing their shareholders than pleasing their fans, and so the actual gamers are sort of suffering. The devs are suffering too, in terms of being casualties of this. A lot of them are either getting laid off, or their studios are getting closed, or they're working in stressful situations, maybe being put in situations that they don't want to be in, having to put these things into the games that they don't like. And for a lot of them, I'm sure it's got to be a drudgery. I mean, I don't think a lot of these people got into game development so they could figure out, so they could be, adding predatory things into games and trying to monetize the crap out of games. I'm sure a lot of them got into it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a while ago. How depressing is it to go to work for 2 or 3 years straight, and your primary job is to figure out how to make people spend money when they don't want to spend money on a product that is not better than the equivalent product that made you want to get into this industry to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We talk about this, especially with Anthem. The difference between Anthem and Mass Effect 3 multiplayer is not that much. It's very similar in a lot of ways, as far as like a lot of generalized things. Yes, it was a cover-based shooter to now, basically being a free-fly shooter, but the shields, the way that everything works in the game is very, very similar to how it works, how it worked in there. And yeah, and it's yeah.
But the way they're doing things is clearly not sustainable. The bloat is not sustainable. That's why they're hemorrhaging employees. That's why this restructuring is happening. So is this just a matter of time before these big companies either go down or are forced to change what they're doing? Or is there something...
Not if people keep shoveling money into their open mall like crazy.
Well, that's part of the problem, right?
But
the other problem is
that
they have...
The chance of them succeeding constantly with all of this stuff, eventually it's going to catch up to some of them. And then, then the stereotypical thing happens. If one of these bigger companies were to fall tomorrow, and just completely fall in their face, I doubt it would be Ubisoft. We didn't really mention this, but Ubisoft their engine works great because they can pump out games at a ridiculously fast rate. Mm-hmm. And this is where there's definitely a lie going on when they say, oh, it costs so much money to make games these days. No, it doesn't. It doesn't
cost as much.
Obsidian has proven this completely to be a basically a bold-faced lie, because they've created a game that looks and feels like the game that a lot of people have been asking for, whose main holder of that genre has been EA, and EA has been saying, oh, it's not financially viable to make these games anymore.
Right.
Really? Because Obsidian just did it on 5% of the budget that you set for Anthem, and is probably going to outsell Anthem. We don't have the numbers in yet. Obviously, this will be something that will be retrospective in about a year. But for the most part, I strongly suspect that ultimately, the Outer Worlds will outperform Andromeda. Blah blah blah. Will outperform Anthem considerably.
Right.
And that looking back on it, they'll look back on Mass Effect and Andromeda and say, why couldn't we just do this? Like looking back on it, they'll look at how much money they spent, how much money they burned in giant piles for Andromeda, and how they took Mass Effect and threw it by the wayside to replace it with Anthem. This thing that was supposed to be, just a money printing machine, which turns out that they released it basically 3 years past when it was a peak desired concept, and they burnt so much money trying to develop the darn thing when, the Outer Worlds was put together. Technically speaking, there was a lot of pre-planning that went into it for years and years and years, but basically, technically wise, they put that thing together in 2 years on 5% of the budget that Anthem had.
Mm-hmm. And admittedly, there was some stuff that they weren't able to do.
Yes, yeah, they were held back, but the point is,
but still,
is that it's a lie. It's a lie when the studios say, look, it's just too expensive to make games anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
right?
a complete lie.
If we're talking about 5% of the budget of Anthem, if you had doubled that to 10% of the budget of Anthem, imagine what they could have accomplished. And that's still peanuts compared to what they've spent on Anthem.
And it's ridiculous because, again, they could have made 3 new Mass Effect games since the third Mass Effect that, if they had just planned it out a little bit better, stuck with a single solid engine, and just sat there pumping the stuff out, they definitely would have made more money than what Anthem is going to be making. And they would have, because again, the biggest, some of the biggest things that moved were the fan merchandise for the Mass Effect series. What fan merchandise are you going to ship for Anthem? Seriously, the game has mechs, which you can't market that aside from a handful of toys and statues and stuff like that. And there is an option for that. There is an option for basically getting to basically print out a version of your Javelin. But the same could have been said for your character in Mass Effect. And if you'd been able to create and carry a character forward in the I know it's confusing because there's this twofold thing going on here, but the Apex missions that you had in Mass Effect, if they had managed to find a way to carry that through several games and just kind of put that out as the live service thing, and if they had managed to implement basically a proper version of it, they could have done that. I don't know why they had to create Anthem, this new world of Anthem. The world is crap in general. The storyline sucks. It's just not intelligent, and the art style, again, it's like you got people in mechs, and then you have people in this weird kind of it's this weird mesh between like trying to be sci-fi and being not sci-fi.
Yeah.
In their clothing options. You walk around the fort, you have characters in costumes and stuff that I don't know, I can't remember if I said this on the podcast or not. I've been to places in the world. Take away the giant striders, the mechs walking around, take away all the sci-fi stuff. Not replace them, just remove them. And you have a scene walking around in that fort that I have personally been to in more than one place on this planet that looks almost identical to that, except it just looks better because it's actually real.
Right. Yeah.
And this is the insanity of the whole thing. The bloat that's been causing this is this insanity. And that's the downside. The positive side is that, again, The Outer Worlds was created on the budget, 5% of that budget. 5%. And in 2 years. And they have plans for this. This is the other big news that's out today on this, is that not only are the characters more or less designed off of some of the characters, not designed off of, but wanting to give you that same feeling as the cast of Firefly, but that they have years of new content and or new games planned out for this thing. And that if this thing does really, really well, they're going to go right into creating that series. And in 2 or 3 years from now, we'll have our hands on the next game or an expansion or something like that. And then a year after that or a year after that, we're going to have access to more stuff. Because if this thing becomes the next big, Fallout game type thing, and it replaces what Fallout was doing as far as sales goes, we're looking at like 12 million units each game, which is exactly what Microsoft wants, which will slowly continue to build and build and build. And again, it's like, what did BioWare sacrifice? What did EA sacrifice to get this stupid concept of a game out? Which again, gameplay is decent. It's extremely repetitive, but it's decently good. But it's good because it's basically the exact same thing that Mass Effect 3 was. And they went back to the drawing board for 5 years to get this thing out the door, to sacrifice their existing content on the altar of nothing. They gave up they gave up Andromeda and Mass Effect, and for Anthem, which is basically just the same thing. It's like, who made these decisions? Why are these decisions something that was even on the table to begin with? And how stupid are the people at EA's board that's deciding these kinds of things and then forcing an engine on them that they can't even utilize to make the game that they want to? It's insane. It's mentally insane, on top of being a financial disaster for them. But again, they're saved by this fluke that they got out of nowhere, that's given them the ability to justify everything that they're doing currently with microtransactions. If I had told certain streamers and certain YouTubers, 6 months ago, that they'd be ranting and raving about an EA game that features loot box microtransactions, they would have called me insane to my face. They would have said that absolutely is not what they're doing. It is absolutely not what they're going for. It is absolutely not what they're in no way under the sun would they have fallen for that. But currently, and I can attest to this as I've attested to it before, and now I have even more confirmation on this, some of these people have already spent well over $250 on this thing. $250. And they're mad because they had to spend $60 on Anthem, which is a buggy, not finished game. But they're more than willing to drop $250 on loot box cosmetics that they don't even see in the game. That's the other thing that gets me. You don't even see the costume that your character is wearing other than your arms. It's like, or when you're a corpse on the ground. That's another. It's like, oh well, at least I make a pretty corpse. It's great. It's mind-boggling to me that's where it's at. Again, good game or not, it doesn't matter. It's the fact that it's an EA loot box game. And that if I had told people a year ago that they'd be clamoring to play this thing nonstop, they would have called me insane and said that I had no ability to forecast the future whatsoever. But yet they're doing it right now.
Right.
It's like, wow.
It's
good job,
weird
guys.
World we live in. I thought 2018 in gaming was weird. 2019 is shaping up to be just nuts. But and not in a bad way. I mean, there's some good stuff coming as well. So, final question on all of this. Obviously, we know part of the solution is we need to vote with our wallets, not buy crap, not buy into predatory practices. And for some people, it's tough. I get it. If I was a fan of Call of Duty Black Ops, if I was a mega fan of that series, and I have to,
and you had the disposable income, if I had the disposable income, I'm sure that I would be very, very tempted to pump money into it just so I could have a good experience with the game.
Honestly,
I know people who spend $200 a month on cigarettes, and honestly, I'd rather them spend that $200.
Well, you can look at it that way.
Loot boxes.
You could look at it that way. But so we know that's part of the solution is vote with your wallet, and really support, like put your money toward companies who are making quality products and practices you support. I mean, this is pretty obvious. This is pretty intuitive. But what else can we be doing? What else can we be doing to push things in the right direction? What else can we be doing to encourage game developers and publishers to say, hey, we don't want this. We want the classic model back, or we want you to keep doing that. We want you to make a quality product that we want to buy, and maybe, sure, release some DLC for it every few months that costs $20 or whatever, if it's good. I've got no problem with buying expansions, personally. I've got no problem with companies making money off of their hard work. But yeah, like these more classic models of monetization, the normal way people buy things, as opposed to all of this, monetizing the crap out of everything in 17 different ways. So what else can we do? Besides just spending our money in certain directions, what else can we do to push things in the right direction?
Basically support the games that are good. Like, you don't necessarily have to pre-order, but like pre-order like the day before the game comes out. If it's from a person that that you trust, that you want to encourage, giving them that pre-order, and yeah, you got lots of disposable income. I mean, you can do it a little bit ahead of time if you want to. If you know that it's going to be a good product. But if you're not going to be doing tons of that kind of pre-ordering, then the next best thing is to just support them when they put out the game. Mm-hmm. When the game comes out, get behind them, give them some money, especially if it's an indie developer. I've moved a lot of my additional spending on video games to a lot of these indie developers because they need more. Like, $10 a month is not, that's nothing to a lot of these big developers. They don't want $200 a month. They want whales that are spending like $5-6 grand a month. and they give no care whatsoever about your measly $10 that you're paying on a loot box. In fact, it makes them more angry because they'd rather you be a free player than for you to be, if you're playing, seeing as it's everybody's topic of discussion, if you're playing Apex and you're spending $10 every 2 months on loot boxes, I guarantee you they value you less than they value new players to their game that are completely free. Because with you, they know that you're never really going to be spending more than that, and that they're as hard as they try, they're not going to be able to rope you into buying and spending $200-$300 on their game, and they don't like you. They'd rather go with a new fan because at least that new fan has a chance of spending $200-$300, and that's years of keeping you as their customer.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
So that's what this really revolves around to. And yeah, you don't see it right now, you don't feel it right now. You will. It's the way that these things are designed. And I mentioned how, oh no, wait, I didn't mention this. That's right, I didn't. I've been doing some digging into who gave EA and Anthem, or EA and Apex the advice that they got for putting out Apex. I think I have it figured out, but I'm not 100% yet. But I think I know who was responsible for basically saying, yeah, let's not announce it ahead of time. Let's just drop it and just throw it out there. Which is, as they themselves attest to, which is the primary thing that made their game successful, is that they didn't let it have any press ahead of time, because the press would have just torn them up. Like, oh, it's from EA, it's a battle royale game, and it has microtransactions, and it's a first-person only shooter. This would have been roasted by the community, but because of the way that they put it out there. And don't believe them when they say, "Oh yeah, we just did this on a hunch." No, they didn't. They had an analyst come in. They had probably it's a pretty big company if it's the one I'm thinking of. That they sat down and said, "Here's our problems that we're having. Here's the issues." They had a brilliant team look at it and go, "Okay, we think we have a solution for you. Don't leak it. Don't put it out. Don't talk about it. Just drop it out of nowhere. Say, hey, tomorrow we're dropping a big game," and then put it out. So am I calling them liars for saying, oh no, we just decided to just throw it out there and it was a really organic decision? No, it wasn't. No decision at a mega $1 million company is ever organic. Is not scrutinized and planned and have lawyers look at it and have marketing people look at it. And I guarantee you it was a long, arduous process of trying to figure out exactly how to line it up to get the best bang for their buck, to get the best reaction that they could possibly get. That this was planned and executed on a strict plan. Like, here's the plan, here's what we're doing, here's steps 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6 if needed. And it wasn't, because it was such a short plan. But yeah, it's coming from the industry. Trust me, when they say, "Oh yeah, we totally, like, this was totally an organic decision of just deciding to just throw it out there and see if the fans enjoyed it." No,
there was a strategy behind that. There was definitely a strategy behind it. So the bottom line is, it's all about where you put your dollars, eh?
Yeah. So it's all about that. So
whether
so
that's
trust
in advance or whether it's when the game launches.
Yeah, take that $10. Find a studio that's doing good stuff. If you really like what Obsidian's doing with the Outer Worlds, check out some of their previous games that they still have the license to sell. Check out some of the content if you haven't played some of their more recent isometric games. And if you feel like, I'm not really, buy it when it's on sale. This Steam sale, I think there's a Steam sale on it right now. But check out the Steam sales for some of their previous projects. And if it looks good, try it out. for some of these things, especially for the sales, like when they drop really really low, Pillars of Eternity is a really good game, and I really encourage you to give it a shot. Now, it is a $60 game, but again, if you wait till it goes on sale, you can usually pick it up for like $20 when they put it out on a really good sale. Or go to GOG, try out a couple of the products there, and that's the way that you can support a developer, because you're rewarding what they're currently doing by rewarding what they have done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way of looking at it. But again, it depends on your disposable income. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on your overall goal. I just want to point this out. So Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire is out. And it has a very positive recent and all review history. Very positive. So again, if you do like the adventure story, if you've never really given an isometric game a try, like, give it a try. Don't buy it at full price. Try and get it on a sale, because if you've never played an isometric game, it is a bit of it's quite different than what you're used to, for sure. For sure. And honestly, if you've never ever tried an isometric game or like a turn-based kind of like strategy game, I'd probably recommend Divinity Original Sin 2 is a little bit it's probably a little bit better to get into, because there's tons of options in Pillars, whereas it's a little bit more streamlined for Divinity. So but Divinity Lorien, I think it's called Lorien Studios, I might be mispronouncing it. They're another studio, small, working on a tiny budget, and yet they managed to make a game that nearly won Game of the Year last year. It was a solid game, or it might have been the year before, I can't remember. But it's a solid game. Pathfinder is another good one, yeah, but that's a different one than that's different than Pillars of Eternity. But Pathfinder is another great game. Like, oh my goodness, I still haven't been able to finish that, just because we've had all this other stuff going on constantly, and I keep getting, one of my saves got corrupted, and I had to start all over from the beginning on Pathfinder, which really sucked, and it turned me off of it for a little while. But bugs are bugs.
But yeah, that's a good point. You can buy the previous people. Games from the developers. You can support smaller developers if you find if you find an indie game you really really like. Look at what else that developer is working on. And maybe support through Patreon or just help to spread hype about.
Here's another thing that I want to point out. This game, it's a mod, and it just got okayed for, and I typed it in wrong. Yeah, I did. It just got okayed for its own Steam page. And I know I'm pronouncing this wrong, but it's Endriel Forgotten Stories. This is a mod for Skyrim that has become so good that they were able to put out their own store page. It's free, 100% free. All you have to own is Skyrim on the Steam store. You don't have to have it installed. You just have to own it. And then you can install this. It installs by itself into its own game. This just came out on the 14th of this month, and of February, and it's amazing. Like, it has, it's a huge collection of mods and work that they've poured into this thing. It's so good. I've been really tempted to do like a full run through of this thing, because this is Skyrim, but basically taking all the improvements that the community has been able to put into this thing for years and years and years. They haven't upgraded the graphics 100%, but you can also mod this game too. So but if you want a new experience in a Skyrim-like game that has a lot of fixes and that is completely different than the Skyrim world, the universe there, and you want to play your own thing, check this thing out. Because again, this is a group of developers that worked on this game, that worked on this as a mod, and it got so big and it got so well respected, and it won several big awards, that is now at the point where it's got its own store page, and it's so well respected that it's got its own achievements and it's got everything. So, like, seriously, check this out. We're probably gonna get into this. We're probably going to do some content on this. This just popped, like I said, it popped up this last week. Really positive reception. Everybody's just loving this thing so far. And it's got more of a psychological component to it than Skyrim does. So it's definitely going to... It's good. It's solid. But this is the kind of content that if you really are interested in supporting this stuff, support them by playing this kind of content, by making it, one of the bigger things that were moved. Even though it's free, it's free. You should dive right into it. When they see that you're getting this, when they see that there's a demand for this, studios take notice. And if it's not the big studios taking notice, some smaller studios, I guarantee you, are taking notice. It's like the whole, Jagged Alliance XCOM type game. Everybody said that was dead. I had an argument with the devs on Jagged Alliance, the rebooted series that they were doing, because they refused to make it turn-based. They said turn-based games just do not exist. And I got into a very heated argument. I kind of burned a bridge on that one. Where I was like, you guys are idiots. You don't understand. This is what makes this game worth it. And they even went on record on a magazine, I think it was PC Gamer, saying, look, there's no way that turn-based games are going to be successful. We have to make this a live action, blah, 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 blah. It has to be live, and there's no choice in the matter, period. End of story. Anybody who thinks this, anybody who thinks any other way is a complete moron. And that game failed miserably. And then a couple months later, XCOM 2 came out. The XCOM rebooted series, and that thing sold more copies because it was a turn-based strategy game. So anyways, we got to cut it short, but
there we go. Yeah, we got to wrap it up here today, but this has been a heavy show, but I think it's been a good show. I think it's been a great discussion. Thank you, everybody, for supporting this show and for the great conversation in the chat. Before you leave, don't forget to slam that like button and that subscribe button if you haven't already, to make sure you catch all of our updates, all of our podcasts, and all of our content that is coming out. And we want to especially thank our Patreon supporters, Old Man Manson, and our 2 anonymous supporters, and all of our Discord community members. And if you haven't joined up there, definitely click the link in the description and head over there. Lots of great discussion taking place all the time. People posting things, posting news, posting fun stuff. It's a great time. I really, really love the community that we built over there. If you are listening after the fact on SoundCloud, iTunes, or Spotify, thank you for subbing, reviewing, and following. And feel free to join us next Tuesday at noon Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube for the live show, where you can interact with us and other listeners and be a part of the discussion. The Augmented Reality Podcast is a presentation of the Triple S League. Check out our YouTube channel for game guides, reviews, comedy, news updates, and tons more quality gaming content. My name is Ashenity, and on behalf of Obsidian, thank you, everybody, so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.